Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In this video I'd like to take a look at a Forex example to show how best to use MTPredictor. But as usual, we start with our risk disclaimer. Remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing, or put another way, all professional traders understand and accept that losses can and will and do unfold. It doesn't matter what trading approach you have for the markets, there always will be losing trades. Right, this is an example I want to look at on the Australian dollar, US dollar on a 4-hourly chart. So you can see here we have automatic setups, we have history triangles that show setups that were filled and didn't go as anticipated. But is that how we use MTPredictor? In other words, is it a black box system where we follow these setups perhaps in the direction of our MTP trend, or is it something else? Well, it's something else, and the reason for that is that basic markets are random about 50% of the time. You can see here there were some setups here that would have been losing in the direction of our blue MTP trend. So how do you define, or how do you decide when the market's in a clear pattern? Well, for this we look for the higher time frame chart. We go out to the higher time frame chart, and this is a time frame between 3 and 5 time frames higher. So a 4-hourly chart, you'd go out to the, say, 8-hour or perhaps the daily. Now from this we then place our DP support and resistance levels on the chart to see where the higher time frame support and resistance is coming in, and then we only look to trade on the shorter term or the shorter time frame when the picture's clear, on the understanding that about 50% of the time the picture's fairly random. So I just want to go back and have a look at those buy setups that were coming in here and show you how these were when the picture was unclear compared to a setup we had after that. So for the DPs we place on previous pivots. So before here we'd have had a previous low here, we'd have had support coming in at this level here, and as you can see the market went through that, so support wasn't unfolding. In other words, the market wasn't doing what it was anticipated. So if I now go down to the 4-hourly chart, can you see how these buy setups here, even though they're on a blue MTP trend, didn't seem to make sense, because here was our support, the market had gone down through it, it then started to go back up again. I mean, so what was the pattern? Was the pattern up? Was the pattern down? It was very difficult to decide what the large blue trend was in relation to how the market was reacting to that support. So that's why at this particular point in time the picture wasn't clear, so those were not a good one to take. So just compare that with, if I go out to the daily chart again, with what we've had more recently, and I'll just use our training mode to show you how this works as the markets unfold. So here you can see we had the market came down to this low here. In fact, actually this came in right at DP support off the previous low, which was lovely. But as the market was going up, you'd have placed a DP off the previous pivot, and can you see how that would have given you a potential resistance area, but on the chart in advance before the market even got there. If I turn training mode off now, you can see how the market went up into that level, then made a meaningful reversal at that level. In other words, the market was reversing at the projected level that we'd anticipated. In other words, it had reversed at that level, as opposed to one we had previously when it went through and we didn't quite know what was going on. So let's now go down to the shorter time frame and see how much difference this makes when you now look at the shorter time frame. So here you can see that we actually nailed that low nicely, the market rallied up. So obviously you wouldn't be looking at sell setups there because, well, the MTP trend was blue and we're coming off support. But look how much clearer the picture is here. Can we see this? If I use our training mode again and go back to that DP sell, look how much clearer that is. In other words, we had a sell setup, our MTP trend had just gone grey to show that our blue uptrend was now in the potential area where there's a potential reversal, but it was at higher time frame resistance. So can you see that? Right in our resistance area. So if we right mouse click on this red sell bar, do analysis, this then uses position sizing to keep our inevitable losses small. Remember I said right at the start that always will be losing trades. When the losses come through, they're kept small at what we call one risk unit. So if the market gets down to this profit target, the profit will be large, not just in dollars, but in risk units. Here, approximately 3.5 times greater than the initial risk. If I turn training mode off, you can see that's what the Australian dollar, US dollar has done. In other words, it's gone down to that target really nicely. But the point I'm making is you see how much clearer the picture was here in relation to the higher time frame support and resistance zones, in other words, these DPs. In other words, here it went right into the DP and was making a reversal at that level. In other words, it was coming in quite nicely at the higher time frame resistance. So that's what we're looking for in MTPredictor. We're looking for when markets are basically giving us a clear picture, in other words, a clear pattern, and everything's coming in with our higher time frame support and resistance levels. That also ties in with our MTP trend color. We're not, as we had back here, just looking to use our MTP trend color when the market trend is unclear. Do you remember when we had the DP back here? It had gone through it, it had gone above it, it was basically messing around, and it was very difficult to see where the support and resistance is coming in. Back here is when the market was in a random phase. In other words, it wasn't doing what we anticipated. When that happens, you stand aside. You stand aside and wait until the picture becomes clear, and becomes clear like this when everything's coming together nicely. So I wanted to show this as an example of the best way to use MTPredictor. And this is an example on the Australian dollar, US dollar on a 4-hourly chart using the daily chart for our higher time frame support and resistance levels.